Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co hostess, Anna, and I'm here with Margaret. You'll never guess what we have in store for you today, baby.
Ooh, hello, all you grieflings and frightlings, and welcome to. I can't speak for Anna. I think she's excited too. This is a topic that her and I came up with because it's fun, it's cute, it's baby horror! What is baby horror? Baby horror is either movies intended to introduce younger audiences to the horror genre, or you're going to find out here in a minute from me and Anna, movies that just introduced us to the horror genre that either were meant to be scary or just terrified us anyways. Anna?
Definitely. We all have our little films that make their marks on us, even to this day. So we're definitely going to be talking about that and maybe some movies that are really fun for smaller kids to kind of get an intro to horror as well. So without further ado, grab yourself some delicious creature from the lagoon latkes and maybe a little bit of lycanthropic lemon tart and curl on up next to your coffin and get ready for a listen.
Yes. So, Anna, what was the first movie and how old were you when you watched this movie and you were scared? Maybe even terrified?
I remember it was actually two. So the first one, which I think we all know at this point, was Chud. Um, And now I just look at clips from the movie and I'm like, what a dumb movie. Why was I so afraid of that? Like, it's so corny and cheesy and kitschy. But at the time, the creatures creeped me out. I was really close to my grandfather too. And there's a scene in the movie where it's a little girl and she's either with her dad or her grandpa, and they're trying to hide out in a telephone booth. And one of the chuds grabs the adult, and obviously we know what happens, and I think that's why I got so upset, because immediately I was like, oh, my pappy, and how kids think. But the other one, I want to say it was Psycho 3. My parents were watching it, and Norman Bates had put one of his victims in one of the old school big old ice freezers that you could get a bag and put the ice in and then go into the gas station and pay for. And I just remember, like, I think the sheriff was looking for the dead person, and they open it up and they're like, oh, it sure is hot today. And they're grabbing ice out and like wiping it all over their face. The ice is bloody, and then they like eat a piece. And I was just like, that's not sanitary. Ugh. So those
What?
were my two. What about you, Margaret?
Those are two scary scenes in movies. A first one, I was young, probably 5. Wizard of Oz. Those dang flying monkeys terrified me. I was so scared of flying monkeys. The second one, Twilight Zone the movie. And there is whatever little one of the segments is a man on an airplane, and there's this gremlin thing ripping out the wing parts. That thing terrified me to the point after I watched the movie, I thought the thing was outside my bedroom window waiting to get me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have two questions for you.
Yeah,
So the first one is, have you ever seen the Simpsons Treehouse of Terror parody of the Twilight Zone?
I have not.
Oh, you need to see it. It's really funny. It's like attacking the school bus and everyone thinks that Bart is like losing it. But the end, the last scene to me is really funny. I won't give it away though. And then the other thing, when the movie Gremlins came out, do you think that they were creepier than the Twilight Gremlin, or was that one just like creepiest gremlin ever?
Twilight Gremlin was the creepiest gremlin ever. I thought the gremlins and gremlin, they were cute. They had a cute aspect to them,
Yeah.
so I did not find them to be creepy. What about you?
Yeah, same here. I think Mogwai are like the most adorable things ever. If they were real, I would have like 10 of them probably. But yeah, it's that gremlin in the Twilight Zone just looks malicious and mean too.
Hmm.
Like it knows what it's doing. It's like, I'm gonna mess with these humans. And it
Yes.
doesn't seem like one that you could tame. Like, you can be like, "Oh, here's a piece of cake. Be my friend now." No, it would be like throwing the plate at you.
Yes. Yes. Yep, they're well said. And even thinking back to right Chud and how you're like, oh my gosh, my grandpa or the flying monkeys,
Mhm.
how we were scared because there's these beings that are gonna take something that is important to us and take
Mhm.
it away from us,
Yeah.
which is really, really terrifying as a
Oh,
young
yeah.
kid that we could lose our access to life, so to speak. If my
Mhm.
parents are taken, if my grandparents are taken, who's going to take care of me?
Oh, definitely. And I think too, when you're that small, like when you're 4, 5, 6 years of age, you rely so much, like you said, on these other figures and just the security and sustainability. And, you're kind of still in your baser instincts and trying to make sure you're sustaining yourself. And just in terms of developmental phases, you're not grown that much beyond that. You're not thinking abstractly yet. You're not kind of able to put concepts together as well as when you get a little bit older.
Yes. And we need adults to help us understand that this is a movie or that is really scary. And
Hmm.
how do they reassure us?
Oh, totally. And it's funny you say that. I think back to when Chud freaked me out. I remember being so scared that my mom called a couple of the other neighborhood moms. And, like, all of my little friends came over, and they were like, "You don't need to be afraid of Chad, it's just a movie," and, it was really a big to throughout the neighborhood. So I have to say, Danny and Ronnie, if you guys ever come across this podcast, and I'm sure you remember me being scared to death of Chud, thank you for trying to make me feel better.
Oh,
But,
how
yes.
sweet that they were trying
Yeah.
to help you.
Yeah, but it was kind of funny too. I mean, now I look back and I'm like, "Oh, good heavens." But, because my best friend on the block, who we're still besties to this day, many years later, um, we were known as, like, the horror kids. Like, our we were going to, like, the video store and, we would rent, like, we'd go back to the horror section and be like, "Oh, we need to see this, we need to see that." So I think it was very shocking too, like, "What? She's afraid of something?" But, it was definitely something else. What about you? Did you have to phone a friend or anything after you saw your horrifying movies as a child?
I just had to deal with it. I just had parents are like, ah, it's just your imagination.
Mhm.
You're okay. You're fine.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think it just got locked back there
Mhm.
somewhere.
Well, you know what I used to tell myself when I was a kid? I don't know if anyone else did this. Tell me if you did. If I was scared of something, I would go to bed and I would say, "If I wake up tomorrow, it's not gonna hurt me." 'Cause, everything goes bump in the night.
Mhm.
And then I wake up the next day and I would be over it.
I love that. So my mom would have us, if we were scared, hide under our blankets. And
Mhm.
then the idea was that nothing could hurt us if we were under our blankets. So I can remember being a kid and getting underneath my blanket and just saying, I'm safe. I'm safe with my kiddo. I watched horror movies with her and she tells the story much better than I do. She was scared. I think we were watching Rose Red and she was scared.
Mhm.
And I said, well, that's somebody's job to scare you. So what are they doing? And she will say her little brain glitched a little bit as it was like trying to take in this new information. And that
Mhm.
from then on, when she watched horror movies, her brain goes to how is somebody making this happen? So then it's not
Yeah.
scary for her because she sees it functionally. So that's, yeah, two different ways coming at horror to soften the blow. That said, are there still movies, or since we're talking about baby horror in the baby horror genre, that still kind of get to you that you're just like, that's still, I can't tell myself not to be scared because it could still be there in the morning, or
Mhm. Um, that's a good question. Well, I think broadly speaking, I don't, and we've talked about this many times. I'm not a huge lover of films where animals or babies or small children are graphically hurt. It just does not, it doesn't do it for me. And if you can stand those types of movies or that's okay in your filmography, like that's fine too. Everyone has things that they just don't like. And I just, I don't know. I guess for me it's like the whole like hurting the innocent. Yeah,
Mhm.
teenagers in the woods acting like fools, man, kill them. They deserve it, right? That's a big
Mhm.
storyline. But I don't really have, I would say I have a couple movies from my childhood that really made me angry, that still make me angry, but nothing that scared me to the point where like if like I walk by a poster, I lose my mind or something. It's more of, aside from things I'm superstitious about, which is a totally different topic. And for a lot of people, including myself, our superstitions are very real. And there are reasons that we hold them. But I don't know, just like I think the movie The Thing probably, and the reason for that is the dog scene,
Mhm.
right? And I remember getting upset and telling my parents. I was little. I probably was like 3 or 4. I think it had come on TV for the first time and it was a big deal. And I was just like, I was crying. I was like, I don't like it hurting the dog. I know, I know it
Mhm.
has to live too, but it shouldn't hurt dogs. And
Yes.
instead of my parents like just being like, oh, it's a movie, it's fine, they were like, you know what, you're absolutely right, and you can feel that way because no one should hurt animals, and
Mhm.
um just kind of validating my feelings, but also saying like this is pretend. And of course, like Kurt Douglas, not Kurt Douglas, um Goldie Hawn's husband,
Yeah. Mhm.
I don't know why I said Kirk Douglas. It was a weird Freudian slip. But at the time, the movie Overboard was
Mhm.
popular, and my mom's like, he's fine. He's in the movie Overboard. We've just watched that, and I'm like, okay. Kurt Russell, that's who I'm
Yes.
thinking of. She's like, I think she was said, Mr. Kurt is fine. He's in that movie with Goldie Hawn. I'm like, okay, because when you're a child, your mind just works in different ways. And ironically enough, Overboard is still one of my favorite movies. Um, yeah, but how about you? Do you have anything that still kind of just gets ya?
Ooh, great question. Especially from like that age. I'm trying to think of the movies that I'm still like,
Mhm.
no, can't watch, can't do. With like you, anything that hurts animals. Oh my gosh, I think not a horror movie. I will also say I believe that there are a couple generations
Mhm.
that have been deeply impacted by the never ending story and the death
Oh, yeah.
of the horse. That
Mhm.
tore me up. Another movie where, again, not a horror movie,
Mhm.
The Lion King,
Yeah.
when Scar kills Mufasa, and that
Mhm.
we'll have to do a whole episode on
Yeah.
baby grief movies because that is a
Mhm.
great one that introduces
Oh, yeah, and
grief.
Bambi, of
Yeah,
course, like, the
Bambi.
shots. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think anyone who ever saw the movie Bambi during their childhood can hear the shots.
Mine was Fox and the Hound. I saw
Yeah.
Bambi, but Fox and the Hound, that as a little kid, that
Yeah.
messed me up for days. I was so upset about what happened to Todd the fox. Like, I was just like, this is
Yeah.
not okay. Like, this poor guy, like, somebody help him.
Mhm. That's how I was with Benji. Benji the Hunted. Benji's running through the woods fighting with a wolf and throws the wolf over the cliff. And which I don't really remember it, but apparently we were in the movie theater. And I was like, don't you do that, Benji. That's not nice to the wolf. you know, because I didn't want to see any animal hurt.
Yeah.
But it's funny talking about like the never ending story. Um, Legend, young Tom Cruise, and of course Tim Curry, who
Yes.
I adore. Um, I actually, that movie, inspired me a little bit when I was a kid. It didn't frighten me at all, but I think it's a great movie for kids because it's so fantasy-like. But you do get introduced to death and mistakes and adjusting to change and rectifying what we have done and trying to make situations better. So I think it is a really great kind of change positive movie. Although my favorite part is when the princess is with darkness and he tries to seduce her and makes her over. She looks so much cuter, like evil. I love
Yes.
that outfit and the hair and makeup. I'm like, girl, keep the look. Like, I don't care if you go for good or evil, but just keep looking cute. But that's like my favorite part, like the whole makeover. Um, but it's great. I mean, and even the fact that darkness is lonely,
Hmm.
because the prologue is, darkness is like, Father, I'm so lonely. And it just goes to show whatever we think in our minds about someone or something, they could be feeling emotions and having experiences that we would never even attach to them.
Yes. Ooh, I love your take on that movie. I could not watch it after, like, I haven't watched it since, like, the unicorn death. That was just it for me. I was
Mhm.
done. I couldn't, that just hurt so
Yeah.
much. And you touch on darkness being lonely and how our villains in our film, they've got depth. They are
Mhm.
lonely, they are sad, and so often darkness gets a bad rap. And
Yeah.
so, piggybacking on that, I know I'm kind of all over the place here because I had a whole bunch of thoughts while you were speaking, so thank
Yeah.
you. Labyrinth. I
Yeah.
think that is a
That's
great
oh my
baby
god. Yeah.
horror movie because we've got these critters and we also
Mhm.
have a our bad guy who is also lonely.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think just the isolation aspect, like those films, they teach you to care about others,
Mhm.
because lonesomeness can lead to all sorts of things. And, it shows the perils of feeling alone, which I really kind of respect and admire too.
Yeah, both movies were two beings trying to ease
Mhm.
their loneliness and being misunderstood, and well,
Mhm.
they also didn't go about it the best way to ease
Yeah.
their loneliness.
Mhm. Well, and I have to say there was a movie, I don't know why I just thought about it, but I guess it's debatable if it's appropriate for children. I watched it all the time as a kid. Um, Stand By Me. I I mean, technically it is sort of hard because they come across a dead body, right? But it's really about friendship and supporting each other and bonding, and it's such a great coming of age film. And I guess maybe it's appropriate for like maybe starting at 5th or 6th grade, but I think it's great.
Oh, I loved Stand By Me in that the whole undercurrent is horror. They're going to
Mhm.
see a dead body, which
Yeah.
is really scary. And then how are they going to? There's this curiosity about death.
Mhm.
They've heard this kid's been hit by a train and his body just got left there. And so their curiosity about the
Yeah.
body, how they bond on
Mhm.
their way there, which when you say Stand By Me, then Kiefer Sutherland. So then we move into another baby horror, mid teen movie,
Yes.
The Lost Boys.
The best. I love, 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 love The Lost Boys. Actually, a friend of mine recently told me they've never seen it, and I think my jaw hit the floor because to me, I've been watching that movie since I was little. Like,
Hmm.
I love Lost Boys. I actually almost tried to get my mom to name her dog Nanook. Like, that's how much
Hmm.
I love that movie. And it's great. I think the best part is the first time you see it, especially as an adult, if you've not seen it, is when you find out who the head vampire is.
Hmm.
Because they're prostrating all of these things to give you these presumptions that aren't accurate. And I love it. Love that. I don't, yeah. Anybody who
Yeah.
doesn't like it, that's okay too. If you've never seen it, try it. I can't say enough good things. And I agree. I mean, I think it's a good preteen to teenage film. If you're a horror baby like Margaret and I were, then younger than that too. But talking about vampires, the Monster Squad is a great one too. Count Dracula summons all of the monsters in this small town, and that movie itself is dealing with so much. They're talking about parents that are in counseling together. The husband feels like his career is more important, or he's more dedicated and consumed by his career. The wife feels like the career is more important than the family. I should correct myself there. And the kids are like, what's going on? But they don't really know. And um I don't know. My favorite scene, which I don't know if I've shared this before, I may have, is when the chubby kid's getting picked on and Rudy rides up on his bike and he tells the bully, who later plays the older brother on the Wonder Years, um, he stomps on it and then he's like, it's your candy now. Eat it. And I'm just like, yes. So it's like the perfect movie for kids that are like being bullied. It's a great introduction to monsters, like the historic classic monsters, and also even to Lost, because at the end, if you haven't seen it, stop listening now, but at the end, when Frankenstein has to go back into the abyss or the void, and he tells the little girl, he's like, bye, and I always tear up. And I know we've talked about this movie a few times, but I really do adore it. I think it's great. What about you? What are your thoughts on the Monster Squad?
The Monster Squad, it's a cute movie. I think I was so Goonies
Mm. Goonies is
that
great too. Yeah.
I think Monster Squad, I was kind of like,
Yeah.
no, because Goonies was my big
Mhm.
adventure movie. Your Monster Squad, my equivalent probably is we're probably at the same age when you watched Monster Squad and I watched Something Wicked. This Way Comes, based on a Bradbury story, which also, well, not also, it touches on all these. It's a town that has all these, touching on all the deep desires of the people in the
Mhm.
town and how they start to change. And that was really eye opening. So, these baby
Yeah.
horror films, how they touch on, right, we're pre
Mhm.
adolescent and bullying, or we're going to go through some changes.
Mhm.
Lost Boys, same with Something Wicked, This Way Comes. The children want to be children watching the adults start to grasp, like they
Mhm.
want their innocence back.
Oh yeah. Well, and another Tim Curry film that I just thought of, The Worst Witch. Do you remember that? Feruza Balk, Tim Curry, and the lady that played she was on The Facts of Life. The
No, I do not remember
the
The
lady with
Worst Witch.
the red hair. Oh goodness, what was she called?
Mrs.
Um
Somebody,
yeah, it
right? The
was
main, like the
yeah.
head
Yeah.
lady.
Yeah, and she was in it too. She played one of the, I think, the teachers, but I would watch it every year when it came on. Feruza Balk plays this little witchy girl in her witchy school, and of course the other witches are kind of jerky. And Tim Curry is the grand high wizard, and he comes and he like this is just from memory. I haven't seen it for a while, but he picks her as like the one with the most promise, and then he sings like this spooky Halloween song, and it's great. I mean, I think that is a perfect kids movie. Even though like I think it's aged not as well as it could have. Teen Witch is a really good one too. Or Teen Wolf as well,
Mhm.
because they're not violent, they're not gory, they're cute, they're kitschy. Definitely a good intro for kids.
Yes, definitely that. We've got
Mrs.
those.
Garrett. Sorry, that's what
No,
she was called.
you're
Mrs.
good.
Garrett.
Miss Garrett, that is her name. I was also thinking, like, Goosebumps is a great introduction. Caroline, based on it's a cartoon. Oh, what is that author's name? He's a big time spooky author. It'll come to me later. I can picture him. So lots of good like movies that
Mhm.
just start to introduce. And I feel like horror now has become such a
Yeah.
popular genre that now baby horror is something
Mhm.
that is acceptable. It's coming out like with Goosebumps or The Bad
Mhm.
Witch or all these other movies that are geared towards kids and less meant to scare them. Like when you said Bad
Yeah.
Witch, I think of The Witches. Did you ever watch that with Angelica
Yes, I love that
Houston? That
movie.
is scary for kids. I love it as an
Mhm.
adult, but I'm like, God, as a kid, that was that these women could get together and just turn you into whatever they
Oh,
desired
yeah.
for him a mouse.
To this day, if I see someone with square toe shoes, I'm very precautious. And it's because of that movie. Like, logically, I know that, they probably just have wide feet, but they might be witches too, because they
Mm-hmm.
don't have toes. We don't know. I'm not gonna ask them to remove their shoes either, but I love that movie. That was done so well. I haven't seen the remake yet, which I really need to. But I remember being in school and I think I had just seen it. One of my teachers was like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "The Grand High Witch." And they were like, what?" And I'm like,
Yes.
"Before she takes the potion." And they're like, "Call your parents." But that's a great one. And I just love like how much character the children have after they're turned to mice. And um, especially when Bruno's parents realize he's a mouse and like the mother's reaction is just so priceless. I love it. Oh my
Yes. Oh,
gosh.
yes. I love the grandma in that movie too.
Yeah.
Yes. He's like, Grandma, Grandma.
Mhm.
She's just like,
Yeah.
a little mouse boy.
Oh, and of course we mustn't forget The Nightmare Before Christmas. That's like mandatory for every child to see.
Yes. So for
Mhm.
you, Nightmare Before Christmas, mandatory for all kids. Any other baby horrors where you're like, this is a good introduction.
Mhm. Oh, I think even though it's hard to find out, Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin. I mean, once
Yes.
again, it really is not scary at all. It's fun, it's cute, it's a great intro. I love The Simpsons. I know I say that pretty often on the cast too, but the Treehouse of Terror, I think those are great. Yeah, it is a cartoon designed for adults, but I love the social commentary. I love that it's a cartoon, so even if it is gory, it's pretend, it's a cartoon. There's no kind of question of that.
Yes. I love that. All the ways that you just have these wonderful ideas for introducing kids to
Mhm.
horror. And I'm listening. I'm like, yeah, I think for me as a kid, it was, yeah, the Disney movies, which had
Mhm.
their elements. And then the introduction of like reading. So for me, my
Mhm.
first cry horror was Edgar Allan Poe. I loved him in
Mhm.
elementary school. And so even thinking back on how as kids we are introduced through various
Oh, yeah.
means, film, TV, The Simpsons now for a lot of kids, books.
Mhm. Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, for me with reading, it was one summer I read like half of all of the Babysitters Club books and also Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like that was my reading list. And it was good. It's great, you know.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a good time. It's a lot of fun. These are movies that just give you more laughs than anything and smiles. And especially, when we're looking at some of them, like Nightmare Before Christmas, The Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin, The Witches, these are films that many of us saw when we were children. So, now you have kiddos of your own. Um, how much fun is it to watch, and even grandparents out there, you took your kids to see this, now you can watch it with your grandkids, and how nostalgic and how much fun, and you can even make it like a special event to do it.
Yes. And introducing not only the genre, we've also been talking on introducing big concepts, death,
Mhm.
dying, grief. So many of these baby horror films really touch on the life transition. So the life loss, moving from prepubescent into
Mhm.
adolescence, all these life changes that we're going through, that baby horror really gives kids a place to hold and to have
Mhm.
that shared experience as they're
Yeah.
witnessing the people on stage or the film going
Mhm.
through what they are experiencing, the bullying, the being lonely and really wanting
Mhm.
companionship. And so what does that look like? The wanting to be taken away by a fantasy world. Again, labyrinth, that desire. Life is so hard. I just want to go into a fantasy world.
Mhm. Well, and I do want to ask too, since we touched a little bit on books, I I still love it. I mean, I loved scary stories to tell in the dark. I can remember being in elementary school, and as soon as the book fair hit, man, I was like, I was there with my money. Like, I need these books. I would read them end to end, like 10, 20 times over because I just thought they were so great. I can still, anytime I meet someone named Harold, the first thing that pops in my mind is Harold up on the roof of the building, putting out the bloodied flesh for it to tan in the sun. And I love that it has stuck with me for so long in such a way. But then it is kind of, some of these stories are super gory, depending on the child's imagination. Is it really something for elementary schoolers? I mean, for a child like you were, or a child like I was, heck yeah, yeah, it's for us. But, um, perhaps if you are going to share that book with your kiddos, gauge their sensitivity to these sorts of stories and pick them over really well.
I feel like you touched on something really great, that like Gen Y, Gen Z, they are getting these curated books now and
Mhm.
media, whereas millennials on up, yeah, there is scary stories to tell in the dark.
Mhm.
I'm guessing people now would argue that that might not be good for elementary school kids. I read those with my daughter. We used to watch.
Mhm.
Did you used to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes! Oh my
Yes,
god,
like we,
yeah.
yes,
It was
yeah.
fun. Like, I looked forward to it. I think it came on Thursdays, I wanna say? I don't know, whatever day it came on, I was like, "It's the day it comes on," and I would watch it. Do you remember, okay, speaking of stuff that people would be like, "No, this is not appropriate for children now." I remember after school around Halloween season, and this was like early 90s, they would play the Trilogy of Terror on cable with Karen Black in it, and the story of the Zuni warrior doll. That was the scariest little doll, but I loved watching that, and I'm like, kids today would not, I don't think they could handle it because it's wild, but I love it. Did you ever see it?
No, I never saw that. We had junior high, high school. We had like
Mm.
Freddy's Tales of Horror, like Freddy Krueger had his own
Yeah, his
TV
show.
show, Tales from the Crypt,
Mhm,
all kinds of like these TV
mhm.
shows. Friday the
Yeah.
13th, I think, had a brief
Yeah.
one that was not meant. Well, maybe, I don't know.
Mhm,
We watched them all the time. They weren't like
mhm,
playing at any weird times. You just turn on TV, like,
mhm.
okay, cool, like Friday the
Yeah.
13th or Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side.
Yes, that was so good. When I remember I would stay up late and try and sneak into the living room where my parents wouldn't hear me to watch Tales from the Crypt, or Freddy's show. I think it was, it Freddy's Nightmares or Freddy's Dreams or something, I think it was called.
Something like
And
that.
then the Friday the 13th, the series, my dad's parents would let me watch when it came on because they were like a little more liberal with what I watched. And I remember the first time I saw an episode, I was like, this doesn't have anything to do with Jason. Remember, it was like an antiquity place and they would
Yes.
collect all these things. But the story about the doll that was haunted that would hiss at people, and that creeped me out.
So many
Mhm.
creepy things.
Yeah.
I loved those shows.
Oh, me
So,
too.
yeah, so creepy. And they put them
Mhm.
on after, like, Dynasty, Knots Landing.
Yeah.
I remember I had a friend's mom that was into those, and I was just like, this
Mhm.
is talk about content
Yeah.
not good, not appropriate for young minds to watch. That's okay.
Right?
We'll put that on when they can watch it, but not other stuff
Mhm.
that
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can remember being a kid and, like, my grandparents would watch Father Dowling's Mysteries, and then after that, it would be, like, old repeats of The Twilight Zone, so that's, like, what we watched, you know, and so my dad's parents watched me after school a lot when I was little, like, elementary age, and that's just, like, how we rolled, but, it's funny to think about now. Maybe that's where my whole obsession with horror started. I don't know.
oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Kids, I can remember being home from school or like in the summer, they'd have a Twilight Zone marathon and my mom would be so excited. And so we would just watch old
Oh,
Twilight
yeah.
Zones. I loved the old Twilight Zones.
Me too. And they're great. They really are. I just I think, like, we lucked out in the sense that, I think I fall into the group of millennials that were still pretty feral, and they always say Gen X was feral. Being feral children, like, we had more freedom. We could expose ourselves to more things, and, just it was a lot of fun.
It
It
was
really
a
was.
lot of
Yeah.
fun. And we got introduced to horror,
Oh,
most
yeah.
likely adult horror. And then it's fun now to see, again,
Mhm.
like I was saying, the curation, the movement of horror
Mhm.
geared towards younger audiences. So then how is it palatable for them? How do they
Mhm.
start to wrestle with the big themes that horror introduces to
Mhm.
us?
Oh, totally. That's I always kind of had hoped that, American Horror Stories would come out with, like, American Horror Stories Junior. That would appeal to, like, that kind of preteen, pre-adolescent
Mhm.
age group. But how fun would that be? You're learning about American history, and you don't even realize it because you're watching a bunch of spooky stuff.
Yes. Ooh, that's probably part of their demographic right now, and
Mhm.
they don't even realize it.
Right? Well, and it's funny because I think about high school, and watch almost anything. I mean, when I was in high school, I think it was like the middle portion of the Scream franchise was pretty popular. And I remember being, I think, in 10th grade reading Lord of the Flies. And that scared me worse than any of those movies ever did.
Oh, yeah, Lord of the Flies
Yeah.
was so scary. I remember in high
No.
school, a friend and we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first
Mhm.
time. And I guess all the adults, oh my God, you can't watch it. It's so scary, so scary. I remember her and I being like, what was so scary about that? Because we're reading things like Lord of the Flies, The
Yeah.
Stranger, all
Oh,
these
yeah.
deep, scary, because they had life, so much life stuff happening that it was scary
Hmm.
that we watched Texas Chainsaw and we were like, what do people think is
Yeah.
so scary
Oh,
about
yeah.
this movie?
Yeah. And that's like, I remember, like, there were certain horror movies at the time where they were, like, made in the 70s or 80s, and they were, like, super, like, taboo, and somebody would get, like, a DVD copy, would go over to, like, a friend's house and watch it in the basement, and most of the time we're just like, "Okay." Because we were, like, reading these books that were so just I think maybe the use of the imagination
Hmm.
instead of just having that visual is what did it. I mean, like, Soylent Green, holy smokes. Like, when you discover what that secret ingredient is, it's not good.
I did not have to read that one.
You've never read it?
No. We had to do like Camus and it
Mhm,
was a Russian author about two sisters that killed somebody. I can't think of what it's
mhm.
called. It's a really famous book, and that book was
Yeah.
I think I was in junior high when I had to read that, junior high English class.
Oh, well, and The Crucible too, which
Mhm.
I remember that book, and I had done like a whole paper about the Salem trials because I told my teacher, I'm like, the horrific part is not this play. The horrific part is that this is part of American history. Like this happened.
That was
Uh,
terrifying as a
mhm,
young girl reading The Crucible. That scared me that somebody could just decide that I'm guilty and that they're
mhm.
going to punish me. And if I'm guilty or if I'm innocent, either way, I'm going to die.
Yeah. Says a lot about women in our society, right? This is kind of an age-old problem that we've been faced with, not a new dilemma. Yeah, but I
Well, have
was
you
just
seen Haxan?
yeah. Hmm?
Haxan, I think it's like Swedish or from Switzerland. It's from 1922, and they go through the history of witches, which is basically if you're an old ugly woman, you're a witch and you're
Mhm.
screwed.
Yeah. Oh, is it called like Hexen?
Yeah,
Like Hexen? Okay. Yeah, Dehex.
Haxan because it's
Okay.
foreign.
Dehexa is the witch in German. So, um, yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I've been to Salem a couple times because I love it. And it was really something else to kind of see all the history. But it's just very riveting. I'm trying to think of any other like baby type spoopy stuff I would recommend, but I think we
So
kind of
much.
yeah. What do you think? Like, I don't know.
I think it's just like our mommy issues. Baby
Hmm.
horror is going to be a continuing theme. So, listeners
Yeah,
in the comments, if you want to share your favorite baby horror film or film that you really think that we need to explore and discuss, please let us know because we've got some coming and we're open to exploring other ones.
definitely. And then we don't really have a character identification question for this cast. However, Margaret, any horror movie that you saw as a kid, is there a character or something that the character said or both that stands out to you? That like you just like you continue to quote or you just think about it or you have like a favorite character?
Oh my goodness, that is such a great question. And now my brain's kind of like, oh, I love the Lost Boys. Who doesn't, like you said, who doesn't love the Lost Boys?
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, I watched that movie so many
Yeah.
times.
Me too.
Labyrinth comes to
Mhm.
mind because the song, the baby song, I can't think of it
Mhm.
now, and I know if I think of it, it'll be in my mind forever when somebody it's gonna drive me crazy now
Oh.
because it's like, what does he say? Who has? And he goes, "Who do? You do."
Mhm.
But there's a question, so when somebody says that question, my brain just goes into that song. So sorry, everybody, my brain is drawing a blank. Anna, take it over.
Well, I have to say my one of my favorite movies even to this day is Nightmare on Elm Street 3: The Dream Warriors. And I mean, I love all the Nightmare movies except the remake. And one of my favorite characters is Taryn because when they're dream warriors, they get to see their super ideal selves, right? And I just always love like how they all were in this institution together and had a lot of different issues and problems and things they were trying to work through in addition to Freddie terrorizing them. But I love when they're like, "What about you, Taryn?" And she gets this really cool punk rock makeover, and she has the mohawk and this really cool like leather studded outfit, and she's like, "In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad." And I was just like, "That's so cool," as a
Yes.
kid. So I attribute most of my high school goth phase to Taryn. Thank you. Um, but I still quote that sometimes. I'll just like randomly say it and you know. usually in company that knows what it means. It's okay. But I always thought that
Yes.
was so cool.
I love that. Yes, the people that inspired are goth. That makes me think when I'm like, I myself am strange and unusual.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and of course too, like the movie The Craft, Nancy, of course. The
Yes.
vinyl jacket. Yeah.
Yes.
Good
So many
times.
good movies.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Definitely.
Yes.
Well, hey, if there's a baby horror movie that we didn't mention, listeners, let us know what you're dying to hear about
Because
because
there's
we,
plenty.
oh, yeah. And I mean, like an empty casket, we're always open. So, you know, drop in anytime.
Yeah. Drop in, let us know, and thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Have a fantastically ghoulish day.
Bye.